It's like a 2 o'clock memorial. So he said he's going to try to come to the 1 o'clock memorial. So it's like, is my mic on? Am I good?
No.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me now? Yeah. Okay, that's good. That's good. All right, let's begin. Okay, hi everybody. Welcome to the 30th anniversary of the Afternoon of Remembrance, an event that got started long ago, and all. And basically, what happened was in the early 90s, it used to be that when an important personage in animation would pass away, like a Chuck Jones or a Friz Frayling or something, they would do a big memorial thing, a big show or whatever, an event. And studios and families still do stuff like that. There was one year in 1994 when it was like 4 people died the same month. It was like Irv Spence, John Hallis, Friz, and one other one, I forgot. And we thought,
Preston Blair.
Which one? Oh, Preston Blair. Yes, thank you. Yeah, see, Jeff was there. He remembers. But we said, gee, each person deserves their own event, deserves an event in all those folks. And then, Jeff was suggesting too in one of the meetings that why don't we just have a thing at the end of the year for everybody and just honor everyone. And we thought, okay, that's a good idea. Yeah, and so this way we're honoring everybody from legends to trainees and from people who are, like very big up, to people that are very, people very old, very young. I think the oldest we've had was someone died at 107, and the youngest was like 19. And everything. It was like a voice actor on Cartoon Network who died in a skateboard accident. So it's like, yeah, everybody. I mean, this year we've got, I think, someone in their 90s and someone who's 36. So it's all kinds, it's all types and all. But the reason we did this too is that this isn't a chance. So us, the animation family, like our community, we could say goodbye to people, our friends and colleagues, and remember them and all. We used to do this at Hollywood Presbyterian on the top of Highland, but we found that animators get a little too squirrely in a church, so they don't want to tell naughty stories, except for Chuck Jones. Chuck never had a problem with that. So I remember that funeral for Virgil Ross. Chuck was like standing in front of the altar and going, "I remember how Virgil met his wife. We were at a dance, and Chuck said, 'Look at that skirt over there. But you can nail that one tonight.'" But they're happily married, so it's okay. So anyway, but but by being in like a little more secular, an environment, we could just enjoy ourselves and enjoy our memories of our friends and have a good time. With the advent of Zoom and these events and all, there are people watching from around the world, and we've had reminiscences and comments coming in from Ireland and from Australia and from Japan, and from Toronto and from New York and all. So it's clearly is a global community. Now, when we're speaking, we're being recorded, and it's going to be on YouTube. And so to Linda Jones, sorry about the joke about your dad. It's fun. It's like, he had fun. But anyway, so while you're speaking, be aware that like there's the stuff is being recorded and you are being heard. For those that are going to be talking on those folks that are going to be talking on Zoom or something, please keep yourself mute when you're not actually speaking, because you get a lot of like background reverb and sound like that. So you want to keep that to a minimum. Okay. All right. So here's what we do. So we're going to start with the event, and each speaker comes up. We ask you to please try to keep your comments to about 3 minutes, which actually is not that short. When you think about it, it's like 6 TV commercials. So, it does add up, it is long. And we're just trying to keep it because it's like 90s, we're covering so many people that we don't want to be here till midnight tonight, And we're going to skip over a lot of the people that are performing actors who have done voice work, the famous like sort of voice people. We put together a montage of of clips of the stuff that they've done. So we're not going to have speakers for them, unless it's specifically requested. So we're going to show that after the intermission. So we're gonna break. We're gonna have a brief intermission just before Bernie Mattinson, and in that place we'll resume with the clip reel, and then we'll continue. So anyway, so just to start off, we're going to start off with some people requested to start a little early, so we're talking about Rich Chidlaw. So is Chris Rakowski around?
Yeah, I'm here.
There you are. Hey, Chris, come on up. You're number one. Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Yeah.
Nice. All right.
There we go.
All right.
So speak to the mic.
Okay. I've never done one of these before, and I was here. Rich and I were great friends for a long time, but I also knew Alan Stovall. We went to Cal Arts together. I wanted to mention that, and I got to know him later, but we fell out of touch the last couple of years of his life, and I'm sorry about that. He was a great guy. And I knew Sue Bielenberg too, mostly through Zoom meetings. She was really a sweet person. I think everybody says that. And I knew Will Ruzicka. We were acquaintances. We worked at Warner's together, and he was a really sweet guy, very talented and hardworking. But as for Rich, I guess I'd like to share a story, something that happened to the both of us that was really fun for me. We had gotten tickets to see Iggy Pop at the Palladium in Hollywood. And the day of the concert, we're driving into Hollywood. I'm driving, Rich is in the bucket seat. And we began to bicker about the directions and how to get to the Palladium. So I said, you get off at Highland, right? And Rich goes, no, you get off on Vine. That way, you pass all the traffic on Highland, and you come into Hollywood, the back door, and you can find parking, and it's a lot easier. And I said, well, all right, that sounds reasonable. So I don't know if you guys know or remember, but when you get off on Vine, Ivar kind of dead ends right into that exit. And from that vantage point is the exact location where Billy Wilder shot William Holden's apartment in Sunset Boulevard. And it's still there. It looks exactly the same. And we're driving and we recognized it at the same time. And Rich goes, look, that's where Billy Wilder shot William Holden's apartment in Sunset Boulevard. And I said, yeah, it looks the same. And he said, yeah, it looks so cool. And we're driving and we're literally going like this. We're like, we didn't get into an accident, but that set the tone for the show. And I loved Rich very much. And I'm going to get upset, but he was a really sensational guy, and he was very talented, and I looked up to him quite a bit. So, ta-da.
What?
We're trying to center the image.
Oh.
You're good, right there.
Recording in progress.
Okay. So what should I move?
It's okay.
You can see what's going on. It's all over on the left.
Okay.
You're good.
Okay.
Standing there.
Stay where you are.
Okay. I think I'm stuck here with the audio again.
No, we're gonna have a little check-in.
All right. Sorry.
Okay, so we wanna. Oh,
Oh
sorry.
yeah, it's on here, right?
Yeah, we gotta turn this off.
Okay.
Oh
Okay.
my gosh.
Oh, good.
Leave. So you're on.
There we go.
this.
I'm on here, right?
Yeah, can
You
I
hear
do
me?
a little tech?
Sure.
for the
Go ahead.
folks at
Go
home?
ahead.
Sorry to interrupt, folks. For those of you at home, I'm going to be messaging you if you're here to speak. I'm going to be sending you a little message behind the scenes. My name is Paula. And I'm going to let you know you're coming up. When it's time for you to speak, we're going to promote you to panelist. So your face will appear on everybody's screen. You can turn your camera on and your mic, and then you'll be able to speak for the honoree that you're here to talk about. So watch your chats and we'll try to help you through this. And Tom, you just leave that off and you got this all the time.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Angle the mic.
Good.
Centered on the screen.
What's your, this way?
Yeah.
Like that?
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. All right. Next, we're going to hear about Leo Sullivan. And to speak about Leo Sullivan is the great Floyd Norman.
Oh, there he is. I'm here to say a few words about my friend and colleague, Leo Sullivan. A great guy who, I think about him, I think about that toothy smile and that goofy laugh and the fact that he loved making cartoons. And we both loved creating animation. And it's weird because I first met Leo, of all places, at the Walt Disney Studio in 1960. Apparently, Leo had applied for a job at the Disney Studio, and the animation bosses said, "Hey, there's a black guy who works here, you know, we'd like you to meet." You know, Disney, in their own sincere and clumsy way, said, "We got a black guy you should meet." And Leo said, "I don't want to meet a black guy. I want a job." But we met that day at Disney, and from that time on became fast friends. I loved animation, and Leo loved animation as well, but Leo took it seriously. To me, animation was just fun, but Leo actually wanted to start a studio, and I thought, are you kidding? A real animation studio? Yeah, he really wanted to do it. And so I reluctantly went along with him because Leo was just a natural leader. And that was one of the things. Leo didn't always do well with the studio bosses because they found him to be pushy and arrogant. He wasn't like that at all. Leo was just confident. He had supreme confidence in himself. And he was the one who thought we should start a company called Vignette Films and actually make, motion pictures. And we did. We did commercials. We did educational films. We did live action. Eventually, Leo ran studios in mainland China and the Philippines. He was a good producer. And I can't think of all the times when I was making a film or a commercial and I got into deep trouble. And Leo always got me out of it because he was very calm, very measured. And, he knew the job. He knew what to do. And he saved my bacon many a day. We worked on so many projects with some Hollywood big shots, important recording artists, and we just had a ball. I look back on our years together, we didn't get, we were never famous, we were never rich, but boy, did we have one heck of a lot of fun. Leo sort of ended his career doing his Afro Kids thing on the internet because Leo just had to be his own boss. He just didn't like working for anybody other than himself. And he was always bummed at me because he said, "Oh, you chose Disney over me." So I said, "Yeah, but Disney pays me." So yeah, I love Leo. The times we had together, good and bad. I mean, it was all joyful. It was all filmmaking, storytelling, animation, and there's no better life than that. I miss you, Leo. Thanks so much for a lot of good times.
Okay. So now we're going to go on to our regularly scheduled program. We're going to honor Franca Grama. Can anybody say anything about Franca Grama? Okay, so sometimes we'll get this where we don't have a speaker and everything. So I'm just going to read off that Franca Grama was the founder and chairman of Harmony Gold, which produced and distributed the anime Robotech movies and the syndicated miniseries Shaka Zulu. So that's Franca Grama. Okay. We're now going to honor Pierre Aslin, Pierre Island. And speaking about him is Ray Kazarin. Ray, are you on Zoom?
I am.
Okay. Yep.
Legendary Swedish director Per Åhlin left us on May 1st at the age of 91.
Ray, are you on?
I am. I started to speak, but
Yeah, we
Had-
can't.
you
You guys
heard-
speak louder.
okay. Can you hear me now?
What?
Can you hear me now?
There we go.
Okay.
You're good to
Okay.
go.
It's a pleasure to be with you, guys. Legendary Swedish director Per Åhlin left us on May 1st at the age of 91. I fell in love with Åhlin's work during several years I lived in Sweden. His films are smart, lyrical, sly, and masterfully crafted. Where our American films shout for our attention and elbow us when they want us to laugh, Per Åhlin's films are stories told at night around a campfire. We lean in because we don't want to miss a word, and we remember them to tell our children. Per Åhlin directed feature films and television series from his studio in a converted sugar factory in the Swedish countryside. In 1968, he directed the animation in the mostly animated Swedish feature I huvudet på en gammal gubbe, Out of an Old Man's Head. Animation historian John Bertil Bendazzi characterizes this debut film as one of the first examples of erotic animation in Europe. And while Per Åhlin is best known for his children's films, he was grounded in an adult sensibility. As Åhlin told Swedish newspaper Svenska Dagbladet, animation is indeed a great medium for children, but should also be thought of and made for a more adult audience. It was not Disney that inspired me, but more grotesque and advanced animation from Poland, Czechoslovakia, and Japan. It is a graphic style that is close to my heart and shows poetic, absurd worlds. Åhlin is probably most recognized for two evergreen films, his 1974 feature Dunderklumpen, and especially his 1975 Christmas television special, Carl Bilto Jansson's Christmas Eve Story. A labor of love, it was not quite finished in time for its scheduled air date, and so first aired on Swedish television in an unfinished, spliced work print. The following year and every year since, it has been broadcast every Christmas Eve throughout Scandinavia and beloved by generations of families. My friend, director Lasse Persson, shared these words. Rest in peace, Per Åhlin, Sweden's all-time greatest creator of animated films, also a friend and inspirer. Director Christian Wiltanius writes, Per Åhlin was a giant, but seemed to have no need to assert himself as such. Certainly he had enormous artistic integrity and was clear about what he knew and could do. But his work was characterized by generosity, trust, curiosity, and playfulness. Per Åhlin's distinctive visual tone has become part of our common image of Sweden. Swedish animation and Swedish film have lost one of their greatest. I remember him with great love. Per Åhlin, thank you, and rest in peace.
Thank you. Thank you. We're now going to honor Craig Armstrong. And speaking about Craig is his wife, Juliet Armstrong, being read by Bronnie Barry.
Hi, everybody. I'm sorry I'm not on camera, but I'm having terrible allergies, so I'm just going to be audible today. I'm speaking on behalf of myself and also for his beloved wife, Juliet. Cito and I were among the people who started this tradition 30 years ago. And at that time, we were in our 30s. And the idea of honoring the departed, especially because most of the departed were not in our generation at that time, it was a little bit more abstract, but now it's really hitting home because we're losing people in our generation. And unfortunately, Craig Armstrong was one of these people, somebody I worked with quite a few times and who I was really very fond of. Craig had a great career, actually. He was a layout and storyboard artist and animation timer. He worked at Warner Brothers, Big Red Dog Productions, Fox Animation, Cool Productions, Disney TV, Filmation, and Hanna-Barbera. I worked with him at Filmation and also on Fern Gully, The Last Rainforest. Craig was a great guy. He was always in on the joke. We always had so much fun. He always hung out with the same people I hung out with on crews. It was a terrific thing to have known him. And I know he's going to be missed horribly. Now, Craig did not win the good health lottery in his life, which was most unfortunate. He had childhood polio. And then later in life, he had a litany of health problems, but fortunately, he had a wonderful wife to support him throughout all of these trials. And not once in my witness with his, unfortunate limp from polio, which he made no big deal out of, and neither did anybody else, but he always kept a great sense of humor. And then later in life, according to Juliet, when they were 30 years together, he'd never lost his sense of humor, despite that Craig had had 3 liver transplants, a kidney replaced. He was diabetic type 1 as a result of immunocompromised meds that were meant to help but hindered. He had a stroke, a broken hip, leg, and ankle, which ultimately put him in a power chair full time. His body atrophied. He lost all muscle mass. And most sadly, he was no longer able to write his name, let alone draw, but he always kept a sense of humor to the very, very end. And according to Juliet, when he was dying, he could still make her laugh. Craig will be missed. We loved him. We appreciated being able to call him our friend. And I hope I've done him justice. Godspeed, Craig. We love you.
Okay, we're now going to honor Ted Bastian. And speaking about Ted is Jason Armstrong. Is Jason around or on Zoom? Okay.
Okay. Right. Hi. I'm here to speak about director Ted Bastien, who passed away early last year in 2023. I remember Ted Bastien well. We worked together on and off for almost 15 years at Nelvana. He actually hired me on my first gig at Nelvana, and I followed him on many freelance storyboard projects, design projects, and even comic books for French publishers. Ted was fairly private, and he'd come over late at night to my house because we were doing freelance, and he'd drop off paper storyboards for cleanup. These are back in the days of pre-storyboard software. And I had to have him downstairs in this basement here so we could go over the boards and he could act out the jokes for me without waking up my kids. Ted was over like 6 feet tall, and I'm considerably shorter. And he'd always make the same joke about entering my Hobbit house. He'd hit his head more than once. He'd love to insert secret jokes into his storyboards for his own amusement. I'd always keep my eyes out for the Ark of the Covenant somewhere in the background. Ted would hand me 20 to 40 storyboard pages of work at one time in the evening, and he'd go back up the same basement stairs, conk, and then he'd go home and he'd immediately phone me and he'd say, "Are you done yet?" I thought he was serious. So I'd come into the studio the next morning, and I'd look like crap because I was done, right? And he'd look right at me and say, "You got any sleep?" And it'd be a beat, right? Just nothing. And then we both say in unison, "Ha! Sleep is for the weak." Rest well, Ted. I'll miss you.
Okay, we're now going to honor Diana Beaumont. And speaking on behalf of Diane is Jane Kellner.
Sorry. Okay. This doesn't work the way my usual Zoom settings do. So I was Diana's sister. not by blood, but because we decided to adopt each other. Back in 1975, when somebody replaced you on a job, you actually got to train them. And she and I worked together for a week at LaRoche McCaffrey in McCall. And by the time we were done, we decided we didn't have any brothers. We had brothers, but we didn't have any sisters, so that we should adopt each other. And we became fast friends through that. And she was an art buyer at Young and Rubicam, and then she was a video producer for the rest of her life. And the high point of her career, she worked in many agencies on the East Coast, was working for R.O. Bleckman at Ink Tank, where she was a producer for a couple of years, and during the heyday of Ink Tank, working on the Perrier commercials with R.O. She was an effective producer because she ran her life out of 3-ring binders, and she did that to the end of her life. And she never married. She created her family from friends and pets, and that's Millie, who was her last puppy. And she met her friends at work, copywriter Gene Kondak at Y&R. She remembered how they just were thrilled at how cool it was to be working for Bleckman at Ink Tank. Vicki Morgan, an art rep, was sitting in Diana's office one day when Diana was on the phone, and Diana said, "I'm sitting here with my best friend." And Vicki went, "Oh, well, I guess we are." And they became each other's person. Denny Tillman was a photographer, and that group photograph you saw was one of Denny's groups that he did. And Diana is in the lower left-hand corner there. And Denny would take photographs of an annual gathering he would do of people that knew each other from various parts of being buyers or artists, etc. Going back to the others, he said that she was an advocate for all the artists who came through her art buying purview. And she had a great friend, Stephanie Lovengo, Pennsylvania. They shared a love of animals, and that's Stephanie ended up with that dog, Millie, and her cat after Diana died. This collaboration with artists created this lifelong love of art and illustrators and drawing and photography and paintings. And she covered her walls with that. It came out of that time of collaboration. She was a devotee of Guru Mai, and that gave her great peace and solace. And she loved chanting. And in the last days of her life, I chanted along with a recording of Guru Mai as she was ending her passage through Alzheimer's. Alzheimer's stole her. It was a 3-year journey. That was the only blessing of that. And as her only surviving sibling, her parents were both dead, I got the privilege of taking care of Diana. And I think I'll end with Diana, my sis. She was beautiful outside. She was a child model, and she was beautiful inside. She made deep connections. She was light and fun, a seeker. She was interesting, and she was interested in you. That's my Diana.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Next, we want to honor Dan Bessie. And speaking about Dan Bessie is Severo Perez. Severo out. Okay. Yeah. Oh, I thought you were coming up. Okay. Oh, Severo online. Okay, go ahead.
Tom, would you let Severo know at the mic that he needs to?
Sorry, Severo, you're on mute. You have to take off your mute.
There we
There we go.
go.
Now we got you.
Okay, Well, I'll have to edit my remarks. Dan Bessie was my friend for 50 years. He was a self-taught animator, cartoonist, writer, filmmaker, and director. I see his life as a film in 5 acts. Act 1 was he was born in Vermont in 1932, and it was his part of his life was that part of the 20th century. His father went off to fight in the Spanish Civil War with the Republicans, leaving his mother behind to take care of herself. Unfortunately, as a college graduate, she couldn't get a job as a teacher. So the next 4 years of her life were hell. She almost committed suicide and was institutionalized. Dan and his brother were sent off to an orphanage. In 1945, he moved to California to live with his father, Alva Bessie. Now, Hollywood at the time was really, may have been thought of people as glamorous and everything, but in reality, Hollywood was a factory town in a sunny location with labor problems. Dan's mother joined them a year later. After the war, of course, the House Un-American Activities decided that they would go after commies in Hollywood and subpoenaed their father, Alva Bessie. Alva refused to comply, and he, along with 10 others, the Hollywood 10, were convicted of contempt of Congress, and Alva spent 9 months in prison. Rather than be ashamed, Dan saw his father as a political and morally courageous person. Alva took Dan to Bansinar one year, and that experience affected him the rest of his life at the great injustice that took place. Act 2 is that he graduated from Santa Monica High School, where he was a cheerleader. And he married young at 18 and had 3 children, Joe, Lisa, and Tim. He had enough clients on his own. At the same time, he also broke into the animation industry, where he was a journeyman animator working in Saturday morning cartoons for all the different studios that were doing work at the time. He started his own company, Learning Garden, where one of his first clients was a soft water company, where the woman shouted, "Hey, Culligan man." In 1970, he produced 2 award-winning shorts. One, a unique 2 shorts showcasing his unique design and his animation style. Square Pegs, Round Holes was about fitting in, and Meet Lisa was about was a tender animated portrait of his disabled daughter that was narrated by June Foray. Dan also produced a feature film, Executive Action. His company produced dozens of medical, scientific, and educational films for corporate and government clients. The period ended with the production of Notorious Jumping Frog of Calaveras County, which sold to HBO. But it was 1982, and the economy took a downturn, and Learning Garden closed, and we all went our separate ways. Dan partnered with a mutual friend and moved to Santa Cruz, California. During those years, he continued producing animation, medical films, and did the short film Peter and the Wolf, which starred Jay Bolger. Finally, he had to deal with a story that really was important in his life, and that was the story of his mother when she was abandoned by her husband in 1938. The fictionalized story, a feature film, Hard Traveling, was based on her experiences. In the final act of Dan's life, he found a new love, John Johnson, a charming British woman who moved to California to be with him. Ultimately, she convinced him that their life could be improved by living somewhere that had national health care. So they bought a farm in France where he continued to write. He finished several books and held workshops every other Friday for aspiring and practicing writers. And of course, he had excellent health care, which he highly recommended. His French proctologist, learning Dan Bessie had been a cartoon animator in the United States, called Dan Mr. Tom and Jerry. Dan repaid the compliment by giving the doctor a drawing of himself, Dan, as Tom the cat, and the doctor as Jerry the mouse, mid-exam. My friend Dan died in July 2023 at age 90. He was a creative, kind, gentle, principled man who lived on his own terms and enjoyed every minute of it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Serge. Okay, we're now going to honor Sue Bielenberg, and speaking on behalf of Sue is Kathy Bauer.
So, if being different was the barometer for coolness, Sue was the coolest of the cool. If being a person who dedicated themselves to caring about the most vulnerable, the littlest creatures literally in the streets and gutters, and who did it without an ounce of pretension or greed, someone who didn't care at all for publicity or being in the spotlight, if that was the barometer for coolness, Sue was definitely the coolest of the cool. No matter what was going on in her life, she would always welcome little local rescues into her home, lend a hand to a friend, and support those who were suffering. Sue was kind and she was honest to the core. I believe Sue was grossly underrecognized as an artist in her life, much like Van Gogh. She had an incredible ability to capture people in her artwork, who they were and as they were at any given moment in time. Her art always told the truth. She created stories and scenes nonstop in her artwork. Her urban sketches turned moments that most would think boring and mundane into fascinating and engaging art pieces, as she captured ordinary people interacting with each other on buses, in laundromats, working at food counters. Much of her work focuses on those living on the fringe. She also spent decades drawing bands at Hollywood nightclubs and became known on the Sunset Strip as the Hollywood Art Chick. Sue was also super funny. She was all about cracking people up, including herself. When we were students at UCLA, roommates living in a part of Hollywood that was somewhat dangerous at the time, our apartment was broken into. Sue's car in our parking space was a 2-coffin hearse, the only car that Sue, a young animation student from the Midwest, could afford at the time. We didn't know our neighbors and wanted to inform them of the crime. Sue made a funny flyer with drawings telling the story of what had happened. The ending was a robber splat face down on the concrete with 2 daggers in his back. The next image was Sue speeding off with him in her 2-coffin hearse. I don't remember if she put me in the passenger seat, but the flyer cracked me up, and probably the neighbors too, or maybe scared them a little bit. I don't know. Many of us have such stories about Sue. It's no wonder that Sue was an integral part of the creative team on The Simpsons that helped propel the show into success. One director who she worked with told me that she had the ability to come with new creative poses for characters all the time. Sue worked on many other popular shows such as King of the Hill, Dilbert, the Rugrats. She always fought for the underdog. She worked nonstop for fair treatment and equal rights. When someone commented that she and Lisa Simpson were 2 ladies on the town, Sue had a quick and witty response. I'm not a lady, I'm a storyboard artist. It was an honor to be Sue's friend, a real honor. The world will certainly be less fun and less happy place without Sue. And for anyone who's interested, I've made a poster board in the back. You can see some of her work. And she was just, it's impossible for me to really do her justice with my words. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so now we're going to talk about Ed Blyer. And speaking for Ed Blyer is Jerry Beck. Is Jerry here right now? He's what? He's on Zoom? Okay.
I am here. I am
There you go.
figuring it out. Hello, if you can hear me. Ed Blyer, unlike the other people who've come up and the people who probably precede me, I did not know Ed Blyer, but he's a name you should know. He was an executive. He was a he worked for ABC in the early 60s. He was in love with cartoons. They were running the Bugs Bunny show. He had a lot to do with the Bugs Bunny show and Warner Brothers cartoons being on television on Saturday morning. He got hired by Warner's in 1968 and actually came to them to develop cable television for Warner Brothers, which led to the very earliest days of Nickelodeon. But that's not why we should know his name. We should know his name is they made him the president of Warner Brothers Animation in the 1970s. And you're probably thinking, what did they do in the 1970s? 1970s for animation in general was the worst, as far as I'm concerned, the worst period, a low point in the field. Disney had passed away. Bakshi was making his features. It was an unusual period. Warner Brothers was so low that they even licensed the characters to Filmation to do a movie, which is ridiculous. Blyer came in there and he got Chuck Jones to come back to the studio and do TV specials, the Bugs Bunny Roadrunner movie. He recruited Friz Freeling from his own studio, to Patty Freeling, to come back to Warner Brothers to make new compilation movies and specials for the channel. He was the guy behind that department that kept animation alive because he believed in it. And if you know anything, even about the studio today, Coyote versus Acme, they really don't care about animation, even though it's clearly a bread and butter thing for them. But this guy kept that studio going. He kept the characters alive and merchandising until he could hand it off to when the boom started coming in. He was the guy who got Steven Spielberg to come in and do Tiny Toons and Animaniacs later, and left around that period. I guess that was, when was that? The early 90s. So Ed Blyer, a champion for keeping the Warner Brothers cartoons in particular alive during a very rocky period. And all I can say is, I salute you, sir. Thank you.
Okay. We're now going to honor Earl Bowen. We're doing Mark Boyer first? Okay, we'll do Mark Boyer. Can anybody speak on behalf of Mark Boyer? Oh, you have some? Okay.
Hi, everybody. I'm going to read a few words from the French independent animation artist and filmmaker Joanna Lurie. Mark was her producer through his company Lardu on numerous films. Joanna's words. It's a sad time. I worked with Mark for 16 years on all my short films. He was both a producer and a friend. His passing was sudden, and I'm uncertain about Lardu's future now. The team is deeply affected, having known each other for ages and sharing a passion for cinema since they were young at school. But I think they have no choice but to continue, as they have got many films in production. Not just my films, but filmmakers like Jerome Bulbez, Eric Lejeune, Doris Bounignol, and many others whose work Mark gave his full support to. As the man behind over 90 short films, series, and documentaries, the team at Lardu Films described him as a true Swiss Army knife who knew how to do everything. He excelled as much as a producer, director, and cinematographer as in post-production and editing, and he reveled in it. On set, he was entirely devoted to the film, to others, to keeping the workflow, and to creating beauty. I know that Mark Boyer will be remembered as a man guided by an unwavering passion who dedicated his life to promoting short films and animation. Thank you. Thank you, Joanna.
We're now going to honor David Braden, and speaking on behalf of David Braden is Cindy Garcia.
I am not Cindy Garcia. I'm Eugene Salandra. How do you do? But I will be reading Cindy's words. A short recollection by Cindy Garcia of David Braden. In 1982, when I first saw David Braden, he was about 22, tall, handsome, and very shy. He had come from Oklahoma to seek his fortune in LA and had managed to land a job at a small animation studio where a friend there realized what a reliable worker he was and suggested he call Disney to see if they were hiring. Since Dave had nothing to lose, he made the call. And it so happened that Disney was hiring. Shortly thereafter, he found himself processing animation in the studio's Xerox camera department. He had landed among a close group of mostly women, myself among them. We were a loquacious sorority of established workers, sometimes with complex relationships. All this was not easy to adjust to, and it was a whole new world for David. The situation might have gone one of two ways. We could have tolerated but never accepted him, or we could take him under our considerable wings and adopt him. We adopted him. Even so, it was probably some time before he felt comfortable with us because he had come from a troubled family and was unsure of himself. However, in a few months, he had made many friends due to his patience, kindness, and good humor. He appreciated everything anyone did for him. Dave adored and wrote music, even started a band, the Screamin' Louise, with his co-worker Gina Wooten. What they may have lacked in expertise, they made up for in volume. And he loved every minute he spent with that band. During his time at Disney, Dave held several positions because he was easy to train. He became a paint technician in the paint lab where the colors we used were all prepared by hand. He then went into the scanning department before he transferred to Disney's Florida location. Among the many films Dave helped to make were The Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, The Lion King, and Lilo and Stitch. Dave Braden was a friend to anyone he worked with. His ability to listen and not to judge made him invaluable in a profession where he often had to work in close quarters, practically elbow to elbow with others for long periods of time. Not everyone could do it gracefully. David could. He was a gift to all of us.
We're now going to honor Ernesto Brieno. And was anybody going to speak for Ernesto? No? Okay. So Ernesto was an in-betweener animator and breakdown artist. He worked at Bear Animation, Croyer Films, Hanna-Barbera, Turner, Disney Animation, and DreamWorks. His credits included Hercules, Tarzan, Fantasia, and Spirit. So that's Ernesto. We're now going to honor Michael Burakoff. And speaking on behalf of Michael is Benji Brook. Okay, come on up.
Susan Burke.
It's on. Okay, here we go. Sorry, Susie Burke. Oh, excuse me. Okay, so speaking on behalf of Susie Burke and speaking on behalf of Susie is Billy Burke.
My mom had a passion for the arts that extended well beyond animation. In her youth, she danced and sang professionally with groups like Aman Folk Ensemble, and went on to sing with groups like Avaz, Nama, and Nevenka. She organized huge international folk music events and even directed music and dance camps in the Mendocino woodlands. So my mom raised me in a world of international folk dance, world music, and animation. I have very fond memories of visiting my mom on projects like The Little Mermaid, Rover Dangerfield, and Fern Gully The Last Rainforest, one of her personal favorites. I learned so much back then, but most importantly, I learned that animators had the very best toys. One story my mom loved particularly to tell was of the time that I interrupted a meeting she had with her director. I must have been maybe 8 or 9. I had snuck into the conference room while my mom and the director were deep in discussion. While hiding from behind some boxes, I fired a rubber band hard with my new technique and hit the director right in the face. My mother turned bright red and began apologizing profusely, obviously mortified and slightly concerned for her job. But when the director saw that it was me who fired the rubber band, he only smiled and shouted, "Oh, now it's on," picking up a handful of rubber bands himself from the table and firing them back at me. I had just started another epic office rubber band fight. So my mom was just an amazing person, and for those who didn't know her, she was a wonderful singer, a beautiful dancer, a gifted artist, and a kind and generous soul. I know my mom was proud of me because she told me so often, but I would like you all to know that I was even more proud of her. And now I'd like to leave you with a little bit of a gift. This is my mom singing, and one of the things that she did best.
Okay, we now like to honor Michael Burkhoff. And speaking about Michael is Benji Brook.
Yeah, I feel like the way my prepared remarks are very dry. If anybody here knew Mike, he would probably be embarrassed that I'm being so serious. But I've known Mike since I was about 10. He was a few years older than me and a close friend of my older brother in high school. I always looked up to him as a kind of iconic comedian, artist, genius type dude. I can't talk about Mike without mentioning the biggest influences in his life, his wonderful family, parents Bob and Beryl, and brother Jim, who I think are out there right now, and his closest friends and musical collaborators, Nick Nauman, Frank Lyon, and Sonny Levine. We all miss Mike so much. Everyone who knew Mike as a kid knew that he would go on to do great things. I can say this without any hyperbole. He was the most genuine, talented, and hilarious person I've ever met. And everyone who knew him would say the same. After I graduated college, Mike invited me into his animation studio in Brooklyn called King Drippa. And that has like a significance to the people that knew him. Mike's biggest clients were in the music industry. He was the touring VJ for DJ Cascade and produced visuals for Major Lazer and directed iconic music videos for MGMT and The Strokes. And he was a lead compositor on We the People, Love, Death and Robots, Scavenger's Reign, Pantheon, and the upcoming series Common Side Effects. Mike and I worked closely together for the past 14 years, and over that time became best friends and brothers. There have only been a handful of projects that I've worked on without Mike, and all of those genuinely sucked. He taught me how to animate, how to direct, and how to see the world. I wouldn't be the man, the friend, or the artist I am today without Mike. He was a deeply spiritual guy with a belief system that was formed out of a love of art and science. And he believed that our human experience is only a sliver of true reality, and art and love allow us to open our portal into another realm of existence. For years, I tried to understand his way of seeing things, but it always seemed like he was operating on another level. And it was only after he died that I began to understand the message he was trying to deliver with his art and his life. And I wanted to read a passage from his favorite book, The Holographic Universe by Michael Talbot. Dividing the universe up into living and non-living things has no meaning. Animate and inanimate matter are inseparably interwoven, and life too is enfolded throughout the totality of the universe. Even a rock is in some way alive, for life and intelligence are present not only in all of matter, but in energy, space, time, and the fabric of the entire universe. And everything else we mistakenly view as separate things. The idea that consciousness and life are ensembles enfolded throughout the universe has an equally dazzling flip side. Just as every portion of a hologram contains the image of the whole, every portion of the universe enfolds the whole. This means that if we knew how to access it, we could find the Andromeda galaxy in the thumbnail of our left hand. Every cell in our body enfolds the entire cosmos. So does every leaf, every raindrop, and every dust mote, which gives new meaning to William Blake's famous poem. See a world in a grain of sand and heaven in a wildflower. Hold infinity in the palm of your hand and eternity in an hour. I love you, Mikey.
We now would like to honor John Bush. And speaking about John is Chris Bailey. There you go.
I'm so sad to be up here. Kind of happy to be up here and represent John, but very sad. John was my producer and my friend. We first met on Kevin Smith's Clerks, the cartoon. He was professional. He was of good humor. And he proved very early on that he had my back. Like many productions as they get started, you know, they hit bumps, we fall behind. And there was a moment where he knocked on my door and said, you know, he always would come up, broach a uncomfortable subject with, do you think, you know, character designs are really far behind? Do you think we need to look for somebody else? And this went on for a couple of weeks until it was reaching critical mass. And I'd hired this young embryonic character designer named Steven Silver, who's brilliant. It was like one of his first gigs. I think we were his second gig. And I said, no, John, Steven's the guy. He draws better than anybody I know. He draws faster than anybody I know, and he can draw characters. So when we hit the style, he's gonna save our show. Now, John was in a position where he could have pushed his way and said, well, we're gonna hedge our bets and look for other candidates anyway. But he just looked at me and said, okay, that was the answer. And I never heard another thing about it. I suppose if Steven didn't save the day and dig us out of that hole, I would have heard something else about it. But in addition to being loyal and having my back, he was just fearless. I don't know if you guys have seen Clerks the cartoon. The subject matter was all over the place. We had an episode that BS&P had an issue with our character designs where it was Randall's high school reunion. And all of his old girlfriends were now lesbians. And the character designs all had facial hair. Little stubble. And BS&P said, we're not doing that. So of course we went through and erased all the facial hair. And it was, I can't remember whose idea that was. Wasn't mine. But a few months, show goes out, a few months come by. And then John knocks on my door and comes in and says, Chris, we have a problem. I'm like, what? He says, well, the lesbians, one of them still has facial hair. I'm like, which one? He said, Ugly Janet. And I thought about it for a second. It was, I actually don't think there's anything in the script that says Ugly Janet is a lesbian. And she wasn't a girlfriend of Randall's. And so I said, can we use that? And his eyes lit up and he got this big smile on his face. He went, let's find out. And he ran back in his office, and I gave him a couple of minutes. Then I knocked on the door and let myself in to eavesdrop, and he was already off the phone. And he was doing whatever producers do on their desks, signing checks or something. And I said, how'd it go? And he said, went great, approved. I said, what did you say? And said, I told him Ugly Janet wasn't a lesbian. And what'd they say? He said, how do we know she's not a lesbian? And he says, really? We're gonna have that conversation? A couple beats went by and he said, okay, approved. He had a wicked sense of humor as well. Quick wit. We went to Korea on a business trip, and the Koreans took us out to dinner for a traditional Korean meal. And there was a toast with some peach wine liqueur thing, and it was very sweet. And they all looked to John for the toast for his approval. And he took a sip and he said, oh yeah, very good. And they all, nodded. And then he took another sip and he slipped in, I won't cough for a year. I almost shot it out my nose, but he said it as such a compliment and so smooth that it went by everyone completely unnoticed. He used to drive down the freeway and honk his horn to get someone's attention and wait, like, hey, how's it going? Two strangers to see how they react. So I learned a lot from John, not just about producing, but he grew up in Japan, for those of you that may or may not know. And if not for him, I might have gone through my whole life without learning that Astro Boy's real name was Tetsuwan. He was very quick to, I had a few Astro Boy toys and he refused to call him by Astro Boy. His method to managing a crew was easy and simple. Learn everything you can about your crew, figure out what will change about them and what won't, and then work with the rest. To John, I wouldn't change a thing.
All right. We're now going to honor Paul Bush. And speaking on behalf of Paul Bush is Patrick Smith.
Hi. This is it's a real honor to speak with you all today. I wish I could be there in person. This is in memory of the legendary experimental animator Paul Bush. He's a friend and colleague of mine for the last 25 years. For those who didn't know Paul, he was highly intellectual, but he had this tremendous sense of humor, and it was a very dry, sarcastic wit. It's that type of sense. It's that type of humor that only highly intelligent people possess. And then add that to the fact that he delivered everything he said with this amazing aristocratic London accent. And there was just nobody better than Paul to talk to. He was a conversationalist and he really listened. And that's what I'm going to miss about him most is our conversations. So professionally, Paul was a true artist. He was a master in several animation techniques, most notably his development of what he coined object replacement animation, a technique which he largely pioneered. Paul was always pushing himself. He's always experimenting with new techniques. You never knew what he would make next. And it was always exciting to see a new film from him. Typically, looking forward to these films at venues like Annecy or Ottawa, and he was prolific. He at the time of his death, I think he had over 20 short films and one feature film. He was also a great teacher. After his death, actually, some of the best tributes that I read about him online were from his students. They just really adored him, and I know a lot of people here are teachers, and that can be really appreciated outside of just his artistry. In closing, I want to mention one more thing about Paul. He had a great passion for motorcycles, and I'm not sure if we ever had a conversation that didn't somehow end up on the subject of motorcycles. It's amazing how he steered it in that direction. And matter of fact, one of his most recent films, a film called Ride, is a brilliant composition. It's a homage to the iconic motorcycles of the 50s and 60s. And I believe it's available online if you look for it. So Paul died last August in a motorcycle accident in Wales. He was 67 years old. So if there's any solace to his sudden and tragic death, I'd like to point out that he died doing what he absolutely loved. So Paul, I hope you're riding forever in heaven, and your films will continue to inspire animators for generations to come. And you will be missed by so many people who truly, truly loved you. And thanks, everybody.
We're now going to honor Roger Chenard, and speaking on behalf of Roger is Carolyn Bates. There we go.
I need a box.
We've got the June Foray honorary stool there.
Thank you. Okay. Roger Chenard passed last year at the age of 81. He attended the Chenard Arts Institute, but was not related to its founder, Nelbert Chenard. Roger worked at Spun Buggy and John Urie's before co-founding Duck Soup Productions with the great Dwayne Crowther. I met Roger in the mid-70s and began working there in 1978, off and on for about 20 years. Duck Soup Productions, later known simply as Duck, was a preeminent award-winning commercial studio in LA. When ads had strong, memorable characters and the directors had freer reign to explore their own creative styles. Many great folk worked at Duck Soup: Toby Bluth, Corny Cole, Mark Hausler. Oh, sorry, thank you. Ambi Palawodo and Kunimi Terada, Ed Hartley, John Howley, Istvan Banyai, and countless others. Roger was a tremendously gifted designer, director, illustrator, painter, assemblage artist, and sculptor who lent a graphic flourish and sweet whimsy to all his animation projects. Roger appreciated art in all its forms, high and low, and in popular culture. Comic books, toys, classic cartoons, film, and from world cultures, especially Japan, which he frequently visited with his wife, Mariko. He saw beauty and found inspiration in nature, even in everyday objects that others might only see as trash. For those of us who were lucky to have worked alongside Roger, you would have felt and never forgotten his quiet but momentous influence upon your life. He was loving and caring of his family and of his animation family. He worked without ego, and he imparted his love of art and creation to all of us at the studio. Roger was a wonderfully supportive mentor and kind friend whose memory I will always cherish. There's a clip that we brought too. Can you play that? Animation clip?
It's through our editor. Does he have it?
Does William have a clip? for
I
us?
don't know.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Oh, no.
William, run the clip. Say that and see what happens. Yeah.
Say, William, can you run the?
Oh, William, can you run the clip?
It's not happening.
Sorry, I don't have the clip. I apologize.
All right, thank you very much.
We could add the clip online, you know, when it gets put up on YouTube. So we could do that. Great. Okay. So we'd like to honor Tony Clark. And speaking about Tony is Roger Rusher.
Hi, actually, my name is Roger Brown. My Email is Roger Usher. So we've been in contact with dear Roger Usher, and I just let it go. So sorry. So I wanted to say a few words about Tony Clark. I've known him for the last 25 years. I met him in Oakland, California, which overlapping with the last half of his career and his gradual and very reluctant retirement. After college, he won a Fulbright scholarship and he decided to go to Zagreb to study animation with the masters there in the early 70s. He ended up working on numerous films and finished one of his own, a cute film called Grin and Bear It, which is now practically lost. Apparently, there were some film prints that did the European circuit back in the late 70s. He came back to the US and he started hustling for gigs. This is probably a familiar story. He worked on commercials. He worked on CD-ROMs. Somebody may remember those. Disney TV. He worked with Ralph Bakshi on Cool World, and he has some Ralph Bakshi stories. He also worked on Fern Gully, The Last Forest. It seems like a lot of people worked on that. Colossal Pictures and on and on. And in the last 15 years, he started teaching animation, which really gave him great joy, if not a whole lot of money. Except for those darn administrators. He still didn't like those guys. This is crazy. In the last couple of years, he really started to focus on his short animated films. And last year, he started sending them to film festivals. There's hundreds of them, hundreds of film festivals, mostly overseas. And they accept short animated works. And he actually got a few awards from them. And that really gave him great joy. He was being recognized for the art he was doing for himself rather than the art he was doing for other people all those years. And after he passed, we actually found a copy of Grin and Bear It. He had it on a CDR. Somehow he had a copy of it. So his widow allowed it to be posted on YouTube, which it now is. And it's now listed on his credits on IMDb, that lost Zagreb short film from 1978. So his legacy is fairly intact. Thank you so much for honoring him with all these other artists. Thank you for inviting me.
Okay, we're now going to honor Roland Raleigh Crump. And speaking about Raleigh is his son, Chris.
Thanks, Tom. Before I start, I'm really honored to be here on behalf of my entire family. Real quick thing I didn't write, but I was at a D23 conference and I was pitching my dad's art museum exhibit in Oceanside, in like 2015 or something. And I had a bunch of brochures on the table and people are coming by and looking at them. You don't know quite what to say to them. This gal walks up and she's looking at one of them. I said, so do you know Rolly Crump? And she looks up at me, she goes, who hasn't? My dad taught me if you can get a laugh, the audience might listen to what you have to say. All right, so it says right here on my birth certificate, father's occupation, cartoonist. Looking back at this was the first clue that life with Roland Fargo Crump would be, how shall I say, just a little unconventional. Rolly was the life of a party. He just lit up every room he walked into. I think that his days at Disney Animation Studios was as an in-betweener and then assistant animator may have been some of his happiest. And some of his funniest stories were the pranks that fellow animators played on one another. They were vicious. One of the pranks was when a couple of assistant animators had drilled a hole in the wall under the desk of one of the 9 old men, Milt Kahl. They would then take a squeeze ball full of talcum powder in a tube and point it right at his crotch and shoot it at him. He'd get up, go lunch, and his black slacks had this white talcum powder all over. And he was yelling and screaming, God, geez, what the hell? Who did that? Yeah. This was much to the delight of the pranksters in the next office to him. And clearly, these were the days way before human resources. Rolly always had a kooky side to him, but working alongside the likes of Ward Kimball, it just brought out more zaniness, something he never outgrew. His work always had a whimsical, playful side. Who else could get away with satirical posters that suggested that one fly heroin airlines? And it was Ward Kimball that recommended Rolly to Walt Disney when Walt was looking to bring more folks from the studio to come to work at WED. This was the big break. Rolly's life would never be the same. The culture of the 50s and 60s, from beatnik to hippie, in betweener to Imagineer, Rolly's creativity blossomed during those days. And having no formal art training, he was grateful for the fine artists in animation who unknowingly became his teachers. And it was during those days when Rolly discovered the little propeller made from the clip of a Black Wing 602 pencil. He came home and made all kinds of these little propellers spun in the air conditioning wind. So he created an exhibit at the studio library with his mobiles, his paintings, and a bunch of these propellers. Walt Disney saw this exhibit, and remembering those propellers years later, Walt asked Rolly to design the marquee structure to go outside It's a Small World attraction at the 1964 World's Fair. The Tower of the Four Winds was Rolly's favorite design from his days at WED. So before I get hooked off, my 3 minutes is up. I just watched the 51st Annie Awards last week. Rolly was honored during the in memoriam. It was a very special moment, but what struck me while watching the show, I was reminded of that playful sense of humor that animators and people in the animation community have. Dad kept that wonderful sense of humor of a cartoonist all the way to the end of his life. I love you, Dad. Thanks.
Those are good sandwiches, by the way. You should try it. Okay, we're going to honor Sukhdev Dayal. And speaking about Sukhi is Dave Brain.
What I'm going to read is compiled from memories, family's information, and the thoughts of a friend for over 50 years, Vincent Bassols. Sukhdev Singh Dayal was born into an Indian family of position. His father was a physician, healer, and a leader in his district. Sukhi was a teacher at the age of 18. He was expected to practice medicine, and eventually he did. First, following his passion, he moved to Belgium to attend art school. In 1966, Sukhi, Maria Milicek, a Croatian, Vicente Bassols, a Spaniard from Barcelona, and others of various nationalities were in Toronto, Canada, working at studios contracting animation work from Hollywood Animation Studios. Sukhi and Vicente spoke to each other in their common language, French. Sukhi used French to teach Vicente to speak English. Bill Hanna offered to sponsor them all to come to Los Angeles to work on the show Scooby-Doo. The inevitable layoffs at work season's end at Hanna-Barbera made it difficult for Sukhi to provide for his family. He decided to train to practice chiropractic medicine. He opened his own practice, which kept him employed the entire year. I was one of the many clients from animation to benefit from Sukhi's thoughtful and thorough care. He and Maria married and were raising a blended family. Maria became an animation subcontractor and producer. Family raised Sukhi and Maria, the family raised, now I've lost myself. Sukhi and Maria moved to Carmel Valley. Oh, family raised, the end, comma. Sukhi and Maria moved to Carmel Valley, and Sukhi began designing and casting large sculpture pieces. Eventually, they relocated in Laguna Beach, California. Just a few years ago, Sukhi won a competition and created Sea Breeze, a beautifully stylized brass and stained glass statue of a woman holding a multicolored scarf above her head as a symbol of Laguna Beach. The statue is located at the beach's southern end. Sukhi's inspiration for this monument was his memory of Maria for an instant by the ocean in this pose. That's it. Thank you.
We're now going to honor Bill Dennis. And speaking about Bill Dennis is Mr. P. Jayakumar, the CEO of Tunes India.
Hello, everyone. This is Jayakumar from Tunes Media Group. I'm proud to share that I represent a global animation studio which was co-founded by Mr. Bill Dennis way back in 1999. I was part of the core team that founded Toons Animation Studios, and I've been extremely privileged to work closely with Dennis for close to 5 years. What impressed me the most was his high standards of professionalism, ethics, and compassion for the team, and his commitment to excellence. It was Mr. Dennis who first created the IP for Indian audience with The Adventures of Tenali Raman, the first Indian 2D animation series. Thanks to the vision of Dennis, today India is having a vibrant animation industry with many Indian IPs. Dennis was first and foremost a people's person, a visionary, and naturally an organization builder. Be it the Children's Animation Workshop or signature event Week with the Masters, he was architect of many such initiatives. The legacy of Week with the Masters, now called as Animation Masters Summit, is still continuing after 25 years, and this event provides a much needed platform for Indian animators to interact with the veterans in the industry. In fact, we paid a fitting tribute to Bill Dennis by posthumously honoring him with the Legend of Indian Animation Award during the last edition of the event in 2023. Dennis is still fondly remembered in India as the one who ensured that artists are well respected and recognized. We always cherish his memories and his contribution to the Indian animation industry.
Okay, we're now going to honor Alan Dewhurst, and speaking on behalf of Alan is Fraser McLean. Is Fraser around?
He's trying to get.
Oh, he's coming in. Okay.
Are you able to hear me, guys?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Hi, good
Oh,
afternoon.
now I can see you. Great.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you so much for inviting me to take part. It was with great sadness in May of last year that I learned from my former Roger Rabbit colleague, Barney Russell, that Alan Dewhurst, my former boss at Passion Pictures in London, had passed away from cancer. Alison Hamilton, who first shared the news with Barney, reported that Alan's wife, Ellen, had asked that all his old Passion friends and colleagues be informed, and many of us hadn't even known that Alan was ill. This may not be the most accurate description of the studio's history, but Alan and his business partner, Andrew Ruman, could be said to have built the world-renowned Passion Pictures on Richard Williams' old Rolodex. When Dick was given the opportunity to be animation director on Who Framed Roger Rabbit, he was reportedly so happy, finally, to have his freedom to prove in cinemas that top quality hand-drawn animation had not yet reached its peak potential. He waved a triumphant goodbye to the many decades of not being able to walk down a supermarket aisle without seeing at least half a dozen boxes of cereal or bottles of kitchen cleaner or toilet freshener that his amazing team had not at some point advertised. By the time Dick Williams' studio closed, it had earned a worldwide reputation for the quality of its animation, layout, effects, and camera work. And as Emma Calder kindly pointed out to me, while Dick and many of his crew migrated to the Forum in Camden, Alan and Andrew quietly set up the first incarnation of Passion Pictures at 143 Wardour Street in London, one floor below Hugh Gordon's old rostrum camera business, before moving to rooms over a pub in London's Kingly Street, which is where I first met Alan. But it was in a tiny converted coach house in Praed Mews near Paddington Station that I myself spent more than 2 years in the late 80s and early 90s working in Chris Knott's special effects department, adding all the Roger Rabbit style tone mats and rim lights to everyone from Count Chocula to the Chiquita Banana Lady. Alan spoke very little as he came and went through the clouds of cigarette smoke in our first floor department, with the old wooden floors creaking beneath the coffee-stained carpet full of pencil sharpenings. He was a reserved, polite, and endlessly hard-working man. I remember being more than amazed when he showed up to join in with the studio softball games up in Regent's Park in the summer months, running around and swiping the ball with gusto, even shouting the occasional remark or encouragement. When I returned to London from working in the United States in 2000, I went to meet and talk with Alan in his new offices in Great Titchfield Street, where Breakthrough Films had their first tiny working space. And we talked about the future of feature animation in the UK. And it was wonderful to see his determination and ingenuity paying off when Susie Templeton's stop motion Peter and the Wolf won its Oscar in 2008. Alan's sister Faith also worked at Passion Pictures, and my heart goes out to Faith and to Alan's wife Ellen and all of his family and friends for their sad and premature loss. I could not possibly have been more fortunate to have Roger Rabbit and Passion Pictures as the first two steps along the amazing, inspiring, and wildly unpredictable path that my own career in animation has followed. Alan knew and understood the power and the importance of quality in all aspects of the work, creative, technical, and organizational. And it was wonderful to have that confidence that none of the work that he and Andrew brought through the studio was ever anything other than of the best quality. I was only 1 year Alan's junior. The 19th of February would have been his 64th birthday. He should have had many more years in which to continue and enjoy the work that he loved so much, the work that opened so many doors for so many other people. For all that I knew him as a reserved and quiet character, when he did speak, he was perceptive, articulate, and encouraging. Alan always had a very distinct sparkle in his eye and the beginnings of a smile on his face. The photograph is perfect. And I always felt that he knew, understood, and cared a great deal about the true potential of the many different animation teams that he built and managed. The animation industry and the animation community in London and much further afield has lost a very sincere, generous, and visionary man with a surprising flair for softball.
Okay. We're now going to honor Ian Ames, and speaking on behalf of Ian is Dave Brain.
Thank you, Tom. This is a rather short one. This is a press release for Ian from the Pink Floyd organization. Ian Eames, British film director, animator, artist, writer, and pioneer of experimental film techniques, famous for his work with Pink Floyd, has died. Our sincere condolences to his family and friends. Ian's eye-catching animated French film Windows, set to Pink Floyd's One of These Days from 1972, came to the attention of Richard Wright and his unforgettable animation on other Floyd songs, such as The Spinning Clock Faces of Time and The Heartbeat of Speak to Me. They were mainstays of the band's concerts for many years. In more recent years, he also created an absorbing 55-minute film for Pink Floyd's The Endless River. That's the end of the statement. Thank you.
Okay, we're now going to honor Don Ernst. And speaking about Don is his daughters, Darcy and Stacy.
Hello. You want to? Okay. Hi. I'll move together. A little bit. Okay. There we go. Hello. This is definitely an honor for us to be here today. So thank you. Our dad, Don Ernst, was born in Los Angeles in 1934. When he was young, his father was a driver on the MGM studio lot, which piqued our dad's interest in the movie industry. Dad was an editor in the 1960s on Gilligan's Island and Gunsmoke. In the 1970s, he also worked with Ralph Bakshi. We hear that name a lot today. Editing his animated films, Lord of the Rings and Wizards. Towards the end of the 70s, Dad won an Emmy Award for editing a movie of the week, actually, called Raid on Entebbe. He won his second Emmy Award for editing on the TV series Hill Street Blues. He always loved animation, though, and found himself editing the feature Brave Little Toaster. After that, he connected with Disney and edited a couple of shorts for them, Back to Neverland and Tummy Trouble. It was then that he let Disney know of his interest in producing. It was a lifelong goal of his. They said that they would give him a couple of shorts to produce first to see how he did, and he would have to move to Florida to do it. And he was like, yes, I'll do whatever. He jumped at the chance. It was there that he met Rob Minkoff, and he produced the short Roller Coaster Rabbit. Disney loved the work that Dad did on that short, and he offered him the producer role on their animated feature film, Aladdin. It was a dream come true for Dad. After Aladdin, he went on to produce Fantasia 2000 alongside Roy Disney. He loved to tell us the story about how in 1940, when he was about 6 years old, he saw the original Fantasia and in the theater. It made an incredible impression on him. So when he had the opportunity to produce Fantasia 2000, it was the highlight of his career. And he loved working with so many talented people on the crew, many of whom are here today. Our dad retired after that project, but he couldn't get the producing bug out of his system. He produced the English language version of Spirited Away, which won the Academy Award that year.
And Stacy and I are proud to continue Dad's legacy of being part of this incredible animation industry in our roles at DreamWorks. We can remember many nights sitting around the dinner table when we would just talk shop. It was always so valuable to hear his stories and get his perspective. We feel incredibly lucky to have had such a loving and caring dad. Whenever our dad got the chance to spend time with us, he would. Whenever our dad got a chance to tell us how proud he was, he would. Whenever our dad got the chance to tell us how lucky we were to have the family that we do, he would. Dad would be so honored to be considered today from his peers and colleagues in the animation industry that he loved so much. There are so many things we miss about our dad, his fun-loving spirit, his incredible voice, which I'm sure many of you remember, the depth of his love for his family, particularly his grandsons, his kindness and how he made everyone around him feel special, but he was the special one. Thank you.
When I was on Fantasia, I remember I used to tease his editor, Lois, and walk up behind her and go, Lois, Lois. Great voice. Okay, we now like to honor Ian Falconer. And speaking about Ian, is it Eugene, do you have something?
No, there's no.
No, nothing there? Okay. All right. So he was an author and illustrator, and he was the creator of the Olivia books that were the basis for the award-winning Nick Jr. series of the same name. So that's Ian Falconer. Next, we're going to honor James Flynn. And speaking about James Flynn is Tom Moore.
Hi, this is Tom Moore from Cartoon Saloon here in Ireland. Really appreciate the chance to say a few words about our late friend, James Flynn. He was an incredibly important part of the Irish film and television business. I think we can safely say he's one of the architects of the thriving industry that we have here in Ireland today. And he has been an incredible friend to our studio and to each of us personally over the years. He had some more experience and success than us when we were making Secret of Kells, and he generously came on as an exec producer with us. He shored up the confidence in the project amongst the Irish financiers and indeed the European co-production financiers, and helped us navigate those choppy waters, all the legal and difficult financial stuff that us, a motley group of young animators, didn't know what we were getting into, and James really helped us so much. And I have such a warm memory that his wife Juanita's film was nominated, a short film was nominated for the Oscars the same year that Secret of Kells was nominated, and so we spent a lot of time together out in LA that year, and it was a remarkable and amazing early success for Irish
film in general. And so he continued to be a great advisor, a great help, a great, sort of unofficial part of the team that we could turn to over the years since then. And, his untimely death was a shock to all of us, and he's sorely missed, I think, by everyone in the Irish film and television community, and I'm sure internationally as well. So again, just really appreciate the chance to speak about our late friend James. Thank you.
Yeah. Now I'd like to speak about Cam Ford. And speaking about Cam is his daughter, Diane. She's not on Zoom, is she? Okay, so she sent a speech. So Yvette will read it.
Thanks, Tom. Hi. Oh, okay. I know I should stand on the box, but I'm okay. Hi, I'm Yvette Kaplan. I didn't introduce myself before, but I'm going to be speaking for Diana Ford about her dad, Cam Ford. Oh no, her husband, Diana Ford, about her husband, Cam. Yeah, the first sentence gives that away. Cam and I were together for 60 years, married for 53. I met him when we were working at our Transit Park television studios in Sydney, Australia. Cam had been drawing comics and cartoons since early childhood. He quickly learned his skills as an animator, working on early animated commercials for TV and as a key animator on the Beetle Bailey and Crazy Cat series, which was subcontracted from King Features Syndicate. Following this, Cam spent 5 years working and traveling from London at Studios Massien in Madrid on Candelita and commercials for South America. Later, Cam worked for Hallis and Batchelor in London on The Lone Ranger, using his now considerable skills as a studio organizer to make production very much more efficient. He worked for a year on Yellow Submarine as a sequence director and key animator. Cam set up his own studio in Sydney, where during the next 30 years, he part animated and created special effects for nearly 500 TV commercials, documentaries, and feature films. He was a quiet, unassuming, dependable worker. He met his deadlines and mostly to a budget, mostly. His encyclopedic general knowledge and instant recall made him popular at trivia nights and TV quiz shows. Cam's quick and gentle sense of humor endeared him to his many, many friends and colleagues, as did his ability to produce hilarious cartoons of so many funny situations and people. He is so missed by his many colleagues, his 3 devoted children, grandchildren, and by me, who loved, laughed, and worked with him for 60 years. Thank you.
All right. Now I'm going to honor Jerry Fournier, and to speak about Jerry is Sarita Baker. Is there a video? Okay.
I'm going to tell you a little bit about the life of Jerry Fournier. Born in 1964 in a small town in Ontario called Hamilton, it's not far from Buffalo. I met Jerry when I was only 19. My name is Sarita. We got married in 1995 and had a daughter named Rowan. And Jerry is very fond of Rowan. Jerry was a very talented artist and musician, and he liked to draw people like Queen Elizabeth when she passed away, and with Freddie Mercury. He was always drawing his friends too. This is his friend Andy Bartlett, and just drawing silly drawings, very imaginative and zany. And there's Wayne Gretzky with some street guy, some surrealistic kind of drawings. He had a crazy imagination. You can see the influences of Jim Nutt, Ralph Steadman, and Salvador Dali in his work. He was in about 25 different bands. This is Cowhouse and is called Nippleback. We'll play a little clip right now from a mockumentary Nippleback made back in 2022. Jerry loved to laugh, and he loved being able to make people laugh with his art and his music. He was a great friend, and I will miss him, but Jerry would be so happy to know that he was included in this memorial. So thank you. Thank you very much.
All right. Ooh, just a little bit. Okay, we're now going to honor Randy Fulmer. And speaking about Randy is Gary Trousdale.
So Randy Fulmer, he was trained as an animator at CalArts. He came up, through the ranks of animation. He was an accomplished painter, a plein air painter. He was basically a master woodworker and metal worker with like anvils and forges and things like that. But one of his lasting legacies to the animation industry is a now common position in many studios known as an artistic coordinator, where before this came along, animation is a very departmentalized medium. And a lot of the departments don't really know how to speak each other's language. Randy saw this and was able to fluently speak in final check and effects and scene planning and digital production, and kind of brought everybody together in a way that was so successful that subsequent productions unofficially named this position after Randy. They would say, who's going to be our production's Randy? As in this role, he would occasionally write memos that were kind of goofy and silly and always had a point to them and always had, pertinent information buried in them, but they were written like by a slightly dyslexic 6-year-old named Remby Fullman. And you had to kind of wade through the information. I was originally asked to come and speak based on an obituary I kind of wrote for Facebook. So I'll read that. Parental guidance may be required because there might be some naughty words. It is with unbearable sadness that I report that a longtime friend and colleague, Randy Fulmer, has passed away. I recently learned of his battle with cancer too late, because while he fought it quietly and privately, it was burning him down. By the time we knew of his situation, in the words of the late, great James Garner, he had one foot in the grave and the other on a banana peel. Randy was my special effects supervisor, problem solver, and genius on Beauty and the Beast, where I was introduced to him and worked closely with him to bring magic to that film. He moved on from effects to produce, working with Mark Dendel and Dave Reynolds to produce Emperor's New Groove, one of the funniest and most entertaining animated films to come out of Disney Studios in generations. He left the cartoon biz, retiring at the top of his game to found Wind Guitars, one-man, handmade, homemade, high-end bass guitars that took the music industry by surprise and by storm. I was actually more proud and impressed by this facet of his than his animation credits. Any idiot can make a cartoon. These guitars were absolutely gorgeous, truly art. Look them up. I mean, seriously. The thought of this soft-spoken yet hilarious man being gone is heartbreaking. But having been around long enough to know and see how this fucker cancer works, it's most likely a blessing. Love and condolences to his wife, Diana. Rest well, Remby.
Okay, the next ones, some of these we don't have speakers for. Is there anybody speak for Keith Giffen? So Keith was a writer, storyboard artist, character creator, and comic artist. Keith Griffin's credits included the animated series Guardians of the Galaxy, Static Shock, and Batman Beyond. So that's Keith. We're now going to honor Marcin Gizicki. Is there anybody to speak for him? No. Okay. So Marshall was artistic director for the Animator International Animation Film Festival in Poznan, Poland. Marcin Gizicki also served as senior lecturer at RISD. We're now going to honor Daniel Goldberg. So I'm going to speak for Daniel. No? Okay. So producer, screenwriter, Daniel Goldberg's animation credits include Space Jam, Heavy Metal, and Extreme Ghostbusters. Then the next two are voice actors. And now up to Vaye Hotayan. And speaking about Vaye is Clay Renfro.
Hi, everyone. My name is Clay Renfro. I was fortunate to be a line producer and producer at Disney Television Animation for nearly 20 years. And I had the privilege of the last 8 years of that having Vahe not only as a coworker, but what I felt was a valued crew member. Vahe's on it. That was a quote that we love to hear. Those were the three best words that you could hear at Disney TV Animation while in the post-production phase of any show. Any of you who've been through the post-production phase know that waiting for footage from a vendor to come in can be tricky, especially if you're up against a tight deadline. Maybe it's a locked picture, a mix, or God forbid, it's your final day of delivery. At DTVA, Vahe was the technical director who made sure that all the scenes were properly downloaded from the FTP site or the LTO tapes that we would receive from our vendors. He made sure that those were then properly formatted and then safely delivered to all of our editors so that we could begin the post process, not just for one production, but for all the in-house productions that Disney TV had. Because of this, hardly a morning went by where Vahe was one of the first people I emailed or called outlining all the scenes that we needed as priority for the day that had been delivered overnight. Usually his email response was on it, something as simple as that. And amazingly, almost immediately after getting that response, those scenes would be in our inbox ready to go for the editors. In some cases, he would even beat me to the punch and just have the scenes delivered before I could even ask. If I didn't see a response from him within the first 30 minutes to an hour or so, I'd get a little concerned. And so I'd reach out to Alex Teslick, who at the time helped oversee the TD department. Getting that same reassuring Vahe's on it from Alex was always the best response. Although sometimes Alex would say he was taking care of the scenes himself, which I always thought to myself, and this is no offense to Alex, but we want Vahe. And we did want Vahe. We still do. Amazingly, in that 8 years, Vahe and I probably saw each other in person once. That was the joy of working in separate buildings, me in Burbank and Vahe over in Glendale. I regret that now more than ever, that we didn't get that as much face time as we needed. That said, he was such an important part of every crew, whether he knew it or not, and was responsible for getting hundreds of episodes safely onto our screens, always because he was on it. To his wife and 2 young sons, I hope you know that Vahe was greatly appreciated and is truly missed. Thank you.
Okay, we now like to honor Garrett Ho. And speaking on behalf of Garrett is Ken Mitroni. Are you around?
Garrett Ho, my buddy Garrett Ho. Boy, I'm gonna miss that guy. It was funny because I met him on Tiny Toon Adventures, and there was this big happy-go-lucky kind of Hawaiian guy sitting there. Hey, how are you, Garrett? Good. And we all started doing impressions of him, and immediately, to the point where Garrett was doing his own impression of himself. We used to call him like Garrett 2 times because he said everything twice. 2 kinds of cake. 2 kinds of cake. I'm in a quandary. But what a cartoonist! The guy could draw like nobody's business. Really fantastic. And he'd use one of these carpenter pencils. Look at this. This is how to draw with these. And I just like, Garrett, what are you doing? He says, I see the silhouettes better. So there you go. And it worked. And his work was just so nice and clean and balanced. I mean, there was a solid cartoonist, really, really terrific animation guy. And he would always deliver on time, always did a great job. You never had a problem with Garrett's work. That's for damn sure. It was really funny. I was working on the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle Archie comics at the time, and they said, hey, who do you recommend? So I gave him a list, and the top of the list was Garrett. He'd never done comic books before, but I thought he'd knock it out of the park, and he sure did. His work, as you can see, is just phenomenal and clean and all that. It's beautiful. You can see it right here. And he just knocked it out of the park, and he had a great following. He wound up getting a great following in the turtle community. And now it being the 40th anniversary, they're mourning his passing as well, which is very, very nice. I think, the industry's lost a giant. Just a super talented guy and a sweetheart and a guy you could always count on. That's the kind of cartoonists and people you want in the studio, and he will be missed. He's probably sitting up there right now in the clouds and blind at Johnny's pastrami going, hey, the portions are a little small. I thought this was Thank you. I'm going to miss him. Thanks, gang, and always remember Garrett Ho.
We're now going to honor Greg Joachim. Is anybody here to speak for Greg? Greg? No? Okay. Greg worked as a writer with Warner Brothers Animation, Paramount, and Cartoon Network. His screen credits include Looney Tunes, Reality Check, and Looney Tunes Stranger Than Fiction. So that's Greg. We're now going to honor Coslow Johnson. And speaking about Coslow is Dave Brain.
Thank you. This is an edited obituary from the Los Angeles Times. November 8th, 1931 to March 23rd, 2023, the last of the original Laugh-In writers passed. 91 years old, Coslow Johnson. Cos was born in Chicago, attended the University of Illinois, and then served in the Air Force as an officer in the Korean War. He started writing in New York, where he joined his older brother, actor Artie Johnson. Howard Hughes hired him to move to LA, where he wrote, directed, and edited industrial films for Hughes Aircraft. He soon got a chance to write for TV, starting with The Monkees series. A prolific comedy writer, he went on to write, he said, over 500 other shows. At the same time, he wrote cartoons, including the Tom and Jerry's, and children's shows, including Jason and the Star Command. He wrote 2 children's books, 4 movies, and several nightclub acts. He received an Emmy Award for Laugh-In, plus 7 more Emmy nominations. He was infinitely creative in his home life as well. He made furniture, stained glass windows, doors, and small glass houses. In 1975, he married Mary Jane Ferguson. They enjoyed art, music, theater, and traveling together. He was loved by many people, especially his wife, who misses him greatly. Thank you.
We'd next like to honor Takahiro Kimura, and speaking for him is Ed Gaskew.
This is just a collection from his work where he had his obituary, just a longtime fan and respect his work and inspired by it. Takahiro Kimura was a luminary animator and character designer who passed away on March 5th, 2023. Heralded as a stalwart in the industry, Kimura's legacy is etched in the vibrant characters he brought to life. His groundbreaking work on works such as Code Geass elevated the series to its iconic status, with its distinctive character designs leaving an indelible mark on the hearts of fans. Beyond his pivotal role in Code Geass, Kimura lent his creative brilliance to numerous acclaimed projects, including City Hunter, Gao Gaigar, Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, Macross Plus, and Mobile Suit Gundam. Kimura's impact reverberated not only through the characters he crafted, but also in his multifaceted contributions as an animation director and key animator. His artistry enriched the visual narrative of each project, earning him widespread admiration in the animation community. Kimura's influence transcends his individual projects, reminding us of the profound and lasting impact he had on the world of animation. Our deepest condolences go out to Takahiro Kimura's loved ones, and may his artist legacy continue to inspire generations to come.
We now pause to honor William Bike Kinzel, and speaking on behalf of him is Beth Andre Mathers. It's over here.
I am not Beth Mathers. But these are her words. William Bike Kinsel was a dear friend and colleague of mine. For many years, we sat side by side at Class Ki Chupo Incorporated. You don't meet many like him. When I first started at Class Ki Chupo, I was hired as an assistant to the casting director to get my foot in the door and was sealing a creative position within the company. I wandered around for a few weeks, looking, maybe months, trying to see which department I would fit in best with. That's when I met Bike. Almost immediately, he took me under his wing, setting me up with mini lessons and backgrounds to complete, helping me day in and day out until I was able to completely color a background. At that point, I went back to HR and said, I'm ready to test for the show. I had been working at Class Ki Chupo for about 6 or 7 months at that point. I was seated next to Bike for the next 7 years. He continued to be a mentor to me both artistically and in my daily life. Most days he had a warm sourdough breakfast sandwich waiting for me when I arrived, and he could always make me smile. I've missed his friendship so much since leaving Class Ki Chupo and visited with him a few times, but not nearly enough. I owe my career at Class Ki Chupo to him, and more importantly, so many great, funny memories. Thank you for honoring him and his work in animation. Beth Mathers.
Okay, we'd now like to honor Tony Klook. And speaking on behalf of Tony is Michael Rose.
It's Tony, all right. Well, hello. My name is Michael Rose, and I was asked to relate a small anecdote today of my friend Tony Klug. Oh, I like that photo. In the dance of life, chance encounters often unveil individuals who leave an indelible mark on our souls. Their allure is inexplicable, yet it's undeniable. You know those people. Such was my initial rendezvous with Tony Klug in New York City in 1996. At that time, we were going to leave for Korea to supervise the Beavis and Butthead movie for MTV. Tony was in charge of the animation and I was heading the background department. I recall the warmth of Tony's smile when we first met as we shook hands. And then he said, nice to meet you, Mikey. And he looked at me and he said, you know what? We're going to have a great time together. You have to remember, I just met this guy. And I laughed. I said, I like this dude. This guy's cool. I think we're going to have fun. One particular evening in Seoul, it was our first week, Tony and I found ourselves meandering through this labyrinth of small roads, looking for a restaurant. Well, that's what you do. Amidst the obscurity of the whole area, a neon light kind of beckoned us towards this this place at the end of a dark alleyway. We headed there and we found a small neighborhood restaurant filled with just locals. A waitress came over, looked us up and down because obviously we weren't from there. And she sat us at a table. She brought us the menus in Korean, obviously, but they showed the photos of the food. Okay. So we had no idea, so we had a little bit of an idea what they had to offer there at this restaurant. Tony picked out one, but I ran into a linguistic impasse with my dietary preferences. I tried to convey to her that I was a vegetarian and I wanted a dish without meat. I've encountered this dilemma before on my travels, and I can always make people understand what I want with a little modest effort. But unfortunately, this time it wasn't working. She just kept looking at me like this and twisting her head. And all the while I was trying to do this, Tony embarked on a mission of his own. With deft strokes, he conjured up a whimsical drawing that bridged the chasm that I was trying to communicate with. He said, "Don't worry, Mikey, I got it taken care of." He held up this drawing to the woman to see, just to look. And I hadn't really seen it. But all of a sudden, a big smile came over this woman's face. And she called the other ladies over. She come over and look at it. And they all looked at it and kept pointing and laughing at this drawing. And I hadn't seen it yet. And then they looked at me and they gave me the thumbs up. And I said, okay. Tony had drawn 3 animals: a cow, a pig, and a fish. And then he circled it in red and put a red line through each one. Below that, he drew a bunch of carrots, and it must have been broccoli or something. I can't remember. But then he put these little glow signs around each one of them. And to make a long story short, I got my veggies that night. And as we were leaving, this is what's good. As we were leaving, Tony gave the drawing to the waitress. And I could tell by her smile that she was really loved this drawing. Okay. About a month later, Tony and I returned to the same restaurant. And when we arrived, Tony's drawing was in a small red frame on the wall next to the kitchen. Thank you.
Very cool. Very cool. Okay. We're now going to honor Jim Korkis. And speaking about Jim Korkis is Jerry Beck.
Hello, everybody. Back again. Jim was a friend. I don't have funny anecdotes. There he is holding up one of his books. Back in the 1970s, when I started researching animation history, writing books, writing articles, my first published thing was in a little fanzine called Mind Rot. And in there with me was Jim Korkis, a person I did not know, but he was in California, and we had so much in common. He was a school teacher, and he loved animation, and he got to know Jack Hanna, and he did many interviews with Jack Hanna. Started to write many articles. He used to do this thing, Animation Anecdotes. When I moved out to California, I was involved with the beginning of Animation Magazine. anybody remembers it in its first year or two or three, there was a column by Jim Korkis called Animation Anecdotes. And he went on from there to write, I don't even know the number, dozens and dozens of books. I happen to have a couple of them right here. Book of Mouse by Jim Korkis. And this one is called Who's Afraid of the Song of the South? And it's everything about all the controversy of Song of the South. Jim got hired, I believe, in the 90s, mid-90s, I think it was, to come down to Orlando and be part of that Disney Institute. And he was like the main guy there. He was like a teacher, a lecturer, trained the staff at new hires at Disneyland and Disney World. And, he had a great colleague. He wrote for my blog, Cartoon Research, right up till the last moment last year, a weekly column. I don't even know what else to say. I'm just really just riffing. He was a friend. I met him many, many times. We'd get together, and he will be missed. He is missed. He was a major force in the research of classic animation. And really, that's all I'm going to say is just that we miss you, Jim. You're never going to be gone. You will be here. You left your mark. And that's all I have to say right now. Thanks.
Okay, we're now going to honor Peter Kazarczyk, and speaking on behalf of Peter is Henry Selick.
Hi there. I'm Henry Selick, director of several stop motion movies. And I wanted to talk about Pete Kazarczyk, a close friend and associate of mine who we lost last year. Pete made a huge contribution to stop motion animation when he was the DP on Nightmare Before Christmas. He's the one who brought motion control cameras to the film. Got away from just this sort of tabletop, cute little characters come to life like in Rudolph and Frosty the Snowman, and made stop motion cinematic. And something I never learned till like a year ago, that motion control equipment was never part of the budget. They didn't have money for that, but Pete knew we had to have it to make our film bigger, make a richer world that you could believe in. So he made a proposal to the producers, including Kathleen Gavin, the line producer, and he basically said, I will build these motion control systems and we can use them for free. I will train the other camera operators how to program the moves, and in exchange at the end of the show, I get to keep them. Well, they agreed. He did what he said. They were, homemade, but incredibly accurate. He used barbell weights to balance them out. He took the software program that had existed and worked with the original creator of that, Bill Tondreau, to sort of customize it for our needs. And then he taught that to the other folks. And it clearly has been a big part of Nightmare's never-ending success, a film that just won't go away. And he only continued to grow and improve his lighting and his use of technology, I'd say, culminating in what he did for us on the Coraline film a few years back. Anyway, he was a wonderful guy, incredibly talented, no egomaniac in any way. He never raised his voice, and worked as hard or harder than anyone else on the show, and did it with humility, and was able to really inspire his team and me. Anyway, thanks, Pete. Gonna miss you. Bye.
Okay, now going to honor Kathy Cook. Does anybody can speak for Kathy? Yeah, okay. So she was a writer at Ruby Spears, Marvel Filmation, Disney TV Animation, Graz, and Universal Cartoons. Her credits include Scooby and Scrappy Doo, Puppy Hour, Punky Brewster, Centurions, New Kids on the Block, and Kim Possible. So that's Kathy. We're now going to honor Ipe Kuri. And speaking about Ipe is Ed. Ed, yes.
Ipe Kuri was born in Kyoto, Japan. Kuri worked alongside his elder brothers, Kenji and Tatsuo Yoshida, helping pave the way for what we can come to love in the world of manga and animation today. Kuri's legacy is deeply impacted into the fabric of Japanese animation history, from co-founding Tatsunoko Productions in 1962 to serving as its president for nearly 2 decades. His contributions shaped iconic series like Speed Racer and Gatchaman. His passing marks the end of an era, yet his creative spirit and dedication to the art form will continue to inspire future storytellers for years.
We're now going to honor Daniel Langlois, one of the creators of the software Softimage. And speaking about Daniel is David Moran.
Hi again, everybody. This eulogy for Daniel Langlois was sourced and submitted by Bill Perkins. So thank you, Bill. And it was written by David Moran, Executive Director of the Academy Software Foundation. In 1985, Daniel Langlois co-directed a short film titled Tony DePeltry. It was one of the first computer-generated animation shorts ever made. That experience led Daniel to start Softimage, a major step in his mission to develop better software that animators and artists could actually use to make movies. That's where I met Daniel in 1991, and I worked alongside him and the highly motivated team he assembled for 7 years. Daniel was smart, focused, an entrepreneur with a clear vision, with the ability to translate it in terms that would inspire everyone around him. He was a pioneer in the computer-generated animation and he was a pioneer in the computer-generated animation and visual effects industries who redefined what could be put on screen. The people who worked at Softimage and the community who used the software owe so much to him. The news of his passing is a shock, and he will be very sorely missed by all of us. Thank you.
All right, we're now going to honor Lynn Larson, and speaking for Lynn is his son and Mia Karen McGill.
It's me again, Dave Brain. This time, going for my glasses. I'm going to read Remembrance that was written by his son, Aram. Lynn loved art, music, good meal, good joke, and being an animator. Before he died, he said, I've got to draw and have fun my whole life. I've got to be an artist, and it's been great. In the 1950s, Lynn attended Art Center School, which was in Los Angeles at the time, downtown Los Angeles. After his first year, he went with his brother to work on a farm in Louisiana and make money for the next year's tuition. At the end of the season, they went to New Orleans for a weekend to celebrate before going back home to California. Lynn said he couldn't remember exactly what happened that weekend, but they woke up Monday morning with a bad hangover and all their earnings gone. So he returned home with his tail between his legs and applied for a job at Disney in order to get back to art school. He was one of a small group of applicants and was accepted. At that time, Disney was itself like an art school. Guest artists were brought in to give classes. There was a very long period of apprenticeship where young apprentices basically sharpened pencils for animators and eventually got to draw in-betweens. The first show Lynn apprenticed on was The Lady and the Tramp. His mentors were people who had just a few years prior worked on Pinocchio. That picture, he talked a lot about the great leaps in animation that picture had made during its 4 years of creation. He considered Pinocchio a great work of art. It was an exciting time to be an animator. He felt they were making magic. He soon realized that he had fallen in love with the work of animation and wouldn't be returning to Art Center. Over the years, he worked at most studios in Los Angeles and did the jobs of an animator could do. In the 70s, he went to England and worked for Richard Williams on the Pink Panther. Richard was a big influence on him. He was a great artist and innovator who taught him to work on layout. In the 1980s, he worked on shows in France, China, and Japan. Another mentor of Lynn was the late, great maverick Corny Cole. He was a huge influence to many. Lynn used to tell the story of when Corny was asked to do an interior drawing of a big old mansion. The next day, he came in with an exquisitely detailed drawing that looked like it came out of the Renaissance. The studio said it was too detailed and that they needed something more simple. When Lynn said, "Wow, Corny, you must have been up all night. It's too bad they can't use it. Why did you work so hard?" Corny replied, "I don't work for the studio, I work for myself. They just think I work for them." Corny did the art for art's sake of it. Lynn had a small group of animator friends who would occasionally take ridiculously long lunches at Musso and Frank's in Hollywood. They'd sit around for hours telling jokes, doing impressions, and making wacky sound effects. Animators are funny people. Lynn relished the humor and irreverence of the friends. After retiring, Lynn moved up to a little town in the Sierra Mountains. He continued to draw and paint. He got into ceramics and made cartoons. He did a lot of pretty funny cartoons about death, actually. It was his way of expressing his outlook on life and death. If Lynn had a message for people, it might have been to try to navigate the tribulations of life with humor and levity. I think that is what he aspired to do. That's it. Thank you.
Okay. We now like to honor Nick Lewandowski and speaking.
He's not going to make it.
Oh, he's not going to make it?
This is Jeff. is supposed to say.
Yeah, Jeff Sullivan.
Let me see if he sent me the.
Yeah.
No.
All right, I'll just read it this again. So Nick Lewandowski, what?
Sorry.
Oh, do you want to come up?
Yes.
Oh, sure. Hey. Okay.
Sorry. No, it's fine. Hello, everybody. I'm Josh Richards. I really don't have anything prepared. I wasn't expecting to talk, but I am here to just remember my friend and coworker, Nick Lewandowski. I've knew Nick for about 15 years. We worked together first at DreamWorks. He was a crowd artist like I was, and I knew him as just a very quiet, gentle soul. We bonded over simple things like skateboarding and going camping, and that's really where I got to know Nick, because I believe he felt most comfortable outside in nature. Over time, we continued to worked on half a dozen movies together, and eventually became roommates, and learned a lot from him about he was very inquisitive about just life and things in general. And so he taught me how to make cheese and, how to grow mushrooms. And we had a common love of gardening. And Nick's greatest love was probably biking. I think anybody that knows Nick knows that he loved biking, and I do too. And we would often go for rides together anywhere. It didn't matter. Neighborhood, we'd meet up and go for rides in Santa Monica and Malibu. And wherever Nick went, his bike went with him. And this I always thought was really funny. He loved BMXing so much that he had a dedicated suitcase that he could disassemble his bike and fit it into, so that whenever he traveled and went back home to the East Coast to visit family, he could take his bike with him. And I really miss Nick. And it was very unexpected, his passing, and he was too young. And anyway, I'm sorry, I don't have anything prepared, but I miss you, Nick.
That's great. Thank you. Yeah, that's what this is about, is friends saying goodbye to friends. Yeah, it's the important part. So we'd next like to honor Jerry Loveland. And speaking about Jerry is John Rice. You ready? Here we go.
Good. Hey, everybody. I wrote a really long speech. Yeah, no, I'm kidding. I met Jerry, also known as Geronimo and Dog, and lately, Geritol Jer. About 40 years ago at Otis Parsons, we were freshmen together. He had just moved to California. He was right out of high school, very naive. He was amazed at everything he saw in LA. I remember he was always going, damn. And he was from Kentucky and I was from Illinois. So he was like, came up to me, first time I ever saw him. And he was like, are you that farm boy from Illinois? And I'm like, I did not grow up on a farm, but I am from Illinois. And Illinois and Kentucky are very, very close. We kind of border each other. And I think that's why Jerry was like, this guy's kind of like me, Midwest. And we became very close, just like the two states. Jerry, he like me, we were both kind of from families that were kind of poor. And so we struggled financially while we were going through school. And there were times when we didn't have a lot to eat. And I remember one time I had some bread and peanut butter, and Jerry had an orange. And so I made him a peanut butter sandwich, and he gave me half his orange. We never really considered going into animation. It was kind of a happy accident. It was getting close to graduation time in art school. We went to Otis Parsons in downtown LA. And, it's kind of like you get close to graduating and you're like, oh shit, what are we gonna do? And you gotta actually find a job. And so I was in the administration building, they had a job board, and I'm like, background painter apprentice, filmation, what is that? And so I'm like, well, a job's a job, I'm gonna try. And I didn't want to have too much competition, so I didn't want to let the word out that there was a possible job out there. But Jerry was like my best friend, so I'm like, hey Jerry, there's this job, we gotta try to get it. And so he didn't have a car, but I rode him out there on my motorcycle, and we interviewed, and they gave us a test. And so they're like, they said, we paint on this paper. So they gave us some paper. We're like, you paint on paper? And they're like, yeah, you just got to, stretch it, and then you can paint on it. And we're like, stretch it? So we we took the paper, we got back to the dorm, and we're like looking at this paper because we used to, we did paintings on illustration board, and that makes sense. But paper, so we're like, all right, they said something about soaking it so you can stretch it, and so all right, so we filled the tub with some water. All right, we threw the paper in the tub and we're looking at it and we're like, is it stretched yet? I don't know. And we're like, how long should we leave it in there? And there's no internet or anything like that back in those days. So you're on your own. So we took the paper out of the tub and we're like, what do we do with it now? Well, we got to stretch it. I don't know. How do you stretch it? I don't even remember what happened, but it worked out. We both painted the background they asked us to paint. We took it in, and the supervisor there was like, yeah, okay, you guys got the job. And so we both got the job. And it was so great because the people we met on that job were so cool. And it was like, wow, this is like finding your people, I mean, art school is one thing, but to find your people and get paid for it, it was really amazing. And that's how we both ended up in animation. And Jerry stuck with background, and I went and did other stuff. But what else was I gonna say? Am I past 3 minutes yet? Pretty close. Okay. So I used to have to ride Jerry on the back of my motorcycle because he didn't have a car yet. And I remember we were still going to school and working. So we were really busy, had a lot going on. And I remember one time taking him back from work on the back of my bike, and I'm riding along the freeway, and the bike kind of lurched. And I'm like, what the hell? Yeah, I didn't feel like a pothole or anything. So we get back to the dorm, and I'm like, Jerry, what was that? And he goes, oh, I fell asleep and I almost fell off the back of the bike. Jesus. Well, don't do that again. Let's see. So, yeah. I mean, okay, I'll wrap it up. I mean, Jerry, anybody who worked with Jerry knows that he was really stubborn, and really smart and very generous. And he was also really funny.
And I gotta say, everything he's saying is true. I was the one that got, everything he's saying was true. I was the one that got the crumpled papers that, and my immediate supervisor goes, what do you think? And I said, I think he's got it. I think he's gonna give up this paper. Teaching in college. I didn't have any formal training. I worked for 42 years in the business as a background painter, and I had never seen anything like that. He's a great director. Simpsons, everything under the sun, they flourished. Jerry had gone to Disney, and he did great there. I was glad to see them walk away from it at one point. He didn't end up at Disney, but Disney can kind of cripple you. I worked there on Mermaid. We used to party at Filmation.
Thanks, Greg. Thank you.
That's a great line about meeting my people. I like that. I like that one. So yeah. Okay. Next, we're going to honor Vivian Viv Ludlow, and speaking about on behalf of her is Frank Nissen.
Yes, it's true. I'm not Frank Nissen. Sorry. but this is from Frank. I worked with Vivian Ludlow at Nelvana Productions in Toronto, Canada. It was the early days, the mid-70s. The studio produced A Cosmic Christmas, The Devil and Daniel Mouse, among other animated half hours, before launching into an animated feature, Rock and Rule. As I recall, Vivian was there for most of it, if not all. She was an irrepressibly buoyant spirit, affectionately known as Viv. She was always eager to tackle any new challenge. I remember that she animated on several of the projects, but whether she came in as an animator or started out in another capacity eludes me. She was among the bright lights of the Canadian animation industry, of the generation with Robin Budd, Charlie Bonifacio, Chuck Gamage, David Thrasher, and others. Blame this brief list on a bad memory. As happened with so many of us, Viv eventually moved on. She enjoyed a long tenure as a teacher at the animation school at Sheridan College. It was a great time to be in animation, and she was part of it. Frank Nissen.
Okay, so now I'd like to honor Ann Leudig. And the speaking about land, Ann is Haven Alexander.
Hi, Tom. It's Bronnie. I'm actually.
Oh, hey, Bronnie.
I'm actually reading something that Haven
Oh, great.
sent me for Anne.
Mhm.
I want to thank Haven so much for doing this. So she writes, when I first heard the news that Anne had passed away, I felt a wave of both sadness and fond memories wash over me. Although we had lost touch years ago, she was a significant person in my life. We met in 1988, and not only was she a good friend, but at times like a sister, and then later became my boss. Anne had such a strength of character and love of life. She always welcomed you into the fold and was a natural born leader. She did many things over her life, but as many of you know, she made her mark in producing animated television shows at DIC, Warner Brothers Animation, Film Roman, and Universal. We shared many adventures, some of the most memorable including trips to Big Bear and her favorite place, San Felipe, Mexico. And whenever I hear Etta James, I think of Anne, as it was she that introduced me to that soulful icon. She also took me to Ganga Din Restaurant in Studio City for the first time, which was a culinary awakening since I grew up in Orange County, and believe it or not, I had never tried Indian food, which is now very much my favorite. I will be forever grateful to Anne. Not only was she a mensch, but she was also the one who gave me my start in animation on Batman, the animated series. She was an integral part of the leadership of the show, and I was happy and honored that she entrusted me to be a part of that. Anne will always be a cherished member of the animation community, and I extend my heartfelt condolences to everyone who knew and loved her. Thank you.
Okay, we're now going to honor Rick Manchin. And speaking about Rick is Liz Wassel.
Hi, everybody. This is in memory of Rick Machen, our dear friend and colleague from the New York City animation world. We all met Rick back in 1986 when he first came over from England to work on a series of Sugar Bear commercials. And he entered broadcast arts and our world as a person with otherworldly skills, not only just drawing, but his timing and his amazing line. There's a photo that I sent along. It's a scan of a Sugar Bear Buzz piece. It's a layout from a swamp, just so that you can see what kind of line I'm talking about. It was really something, especially for a newcomer like me to the animation and the drawing world. To see that kind of beautiful line was, for me, so inspiring. I wanted to be able to draw a little bit like that if I possibly could. So I had some of Rick's drawings to study when we were working together. As a person, Rick was sweet, funny, super skillful, and very gentle with fellow workers and correcting them, a natural teacher. He was a hoot to be around as well, so all of us just loved his company. And I think of him with such warmth of all these years. We kept in touch, especially in most recent years when he was in London. And, we kept up with each other, especially the last couple years. So I welcomed, hearing how he was doing, and definitely treasured the memories we had back in the 80s of all of us at a really extraordinary time in New York City animation. I have a tribute from Machi Tantillo as well, which I'd like to read to you. Machi says, as much as Rick adored life in New York City, every so often it was clear he needed a trip to the country and a home-cooked meal. We would hop on the bus out to my parents' house where they would dote on him, feed him a lot, and insist that he sleep in as late as he needed to. It was a really fun, restful, rejuvenating time for all of us. My mom always sent Rick back to the East Village with lots of love, care packages, and motherly advice. Even though the stays were short, Rick had a big impact on my family. He was always so kind and gracious and fit right in, sitting next to the wood stove chatting away. He always went on with whatever silliness was going on there. I happily hold all these memories in my heart, and I cheer the day Rick walked into broadcast arts and became my brother in kindred spirit. That's from Machi. So in closing, I'll just say that last photo I sent is actually the walk that he would take through the woods. And I think of him there walking still out in London, the outskirts of London. Thanks.
We'd now like to honor Istvan Majoros, and this is not a speaker, so I'm going to say Istvan Majoros worked as a layout artist and character designer at Filmation, Bakshi, Universal, Warner Brothers, Phil Roman, and Fox. His film credits include Brave Star, The Legend, Fern Gully, The Last Rainforest, Simpsons, Take the Bowl, and The Tiny Toon Adventures, Futurama, and The Simpsons. So that's just fun. We're now going to honor Walter Martitius, and speaking on behalf of Walter is Tiffany Shuttleworth.
When I first met Walter P. Martitius, I actually thought he was a bit of a curmudgeon, but I really could not have been more wrong. Perhaps I was intimidated by his genius talent and his intense passion for his concepts. What I soon came to realize was that he was someone who cared deeply for his art, his friends, and especially his family. Some of his family are watching today, and to them in particular, I offer my deepest condolences. I will also apologize in advance, as there's no way to sum up 63 incredible years in 3 minutes. I was proud to call Walter a colleague, and I was honored to call him a friend. He had a great sense of humor and the best laugh. I miss his laugh. He was never without his black sketchbook and would always sketch or take photos of anything he thought could maybe someday be an inspiration. He had a whole cache of cloud photos, for example, to use as reference. His mind was always creating, always imagining, always caring. He was simply a true talent. His art was only one way he expressed his creativity and perfectionism. He also appreciated great food and was an amazing chef who would research and experiment until he got a recipe just right. While he was extremely proud of his professional accomplishments, and his credits are long and varied, major films, animation, games, to incredible art, digital, watercolor, pastels, and paint, he cherished his other titles more. Wally, as his family called him, and especially Dad, to his 5 children, and particularly Grandpa. I have one quick story. We were having a tough time cracking the look of one of the Barbie movies, and after literally like 60 designs, we were running out of time. I was alone in the office one evening, staring at one specific gorgeous design, when it suddenly hit me, and I turned it upside down. I made phone calls and ran around to 2 buildings, getting everyone's approval. They all loved it. And then they said it was my idea to change his art. I had to call Walter. So I don't think I was the only one who was a tad intimidated by him. By then he was a close friend. And I knew he would be happy just to have settled on something, and he was. But more than that, he actually always loved that concept and the story of how it came about. After that, I became the go-to person to give any news to Walter. I had a really difficult time getting myself to write this. Not only figuring out what to say, but also writing it at all. I think I just didn't want to have to. We all have someone we've been meaning to call. Please take this day as a reminder to stop putting it off and just do it. I miss Walter a lot. The world was just better knowing he was still in it. Thank you.
Okay, we're now going to honor Leiji Matsumoto. And speaking for that is Ed Gaskin.
Japanese animation. Okay. Leiji Matsumoto was a renowned Japanese manga and anime creator who passed away on February 13, 2023. Matsumoto began his exceptional career at the age of 15 when his first manga, Mitsubachi no Boken, was published. He then went on to co-found Leijisha Studio with his wife, Miyako Maki, and adopted the name Leiji Matsumoto in 1965. Matsumoto's prolific career work delved into themes of history, war, and technology, often set in a stylized future. Notable animated series like Space Battleship Yamamoto, Galaxy Express 999, and Space Pirate Captain Harlock showcased his enduring influence on science fiction. Matsumoto's impact extended beyond manga and anime as he collaborated with the French electronic music group Daft Punk, creating iconic music videos, including the hit song One More Time. Throughout his career, he received numerous honors from both the Japanese and French governments. Matsumoto's daughter, Makiko Matsumoto, announced his passing and expressed belief in meeting again in the Sea of the Stars, highlighting her father's enduring legacy. Thank you.
Okay, we've made it to the break time. So, yay! So let's take a 15-minute intermission, boys. 15, okay. Have some food, whatever.